Imagine waking up every morning on an island where escape is considered impossible. Cold ocean water surrounds you in every direction. The currents are powerful. The temperature is low enough to kill within minutes. And every guard believes that nobody who enters this prison will ever leave alive. This is Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary, the most feared prison in America. It is June 1962. Inside one of its tiny concrete cells lives a quiet prisoner named Frank Morris. Unlike many inmates, Frank isn't known for violence. He's known for something much more dangerous, his intelligence. Before arriving at Alcatraz, he had already escaped from several prisons. The authorities believed Alcatraz would finally stop him. They were wrong. Every day followed the same routine. Wake up, count, breakfast, work, another count, dinner, lights out. The guards believed strict schedules destroyed hope. But while everyone else saw the same walls every day, Frank saw something different. He saw weaknesses. His cell had an air vent beneath the sink. Behind that vent was an old maintenance corridor that had been ignored for years. The concrete around it wasn't as strong as the rest of the prison. Frank secretly tested it with a small metal spoon stolen from the dining hall. Little by little, tiny pieces of concrete broke away. It wasn't enough. He needed help. Soon he quietly recruited two brothers imprisoned nearby, John Anglin and Clarence Anglin. Unlike Frank, the Anglin brothers had spent their childhood working on rivers and lakes in Florida. They were excellent swimmers. That skill would become essential. The three men made a silent agreement. No one outside the group could know. Every night, after the guards finished their final inspection, the digging began. Using spoons, homemade drills built from stolen vacuum cleaner motors, and pieces of scrap metal, they slowly enlarged the ventilation openings behind their cells. The work was painfully slow. Every chip of concrete had to disappear without raising suspicion. They hid the dust inside their clothing. Sometimes they scattered it across the prison yard during exercise. Other times they flushed small amounts down the toilets. For months, the guards noticed nothing. Night after night, the holes became larger. Eventually, they were big enough for a man to squeeze through. Behind the cells was a narrow utility passage filled with dusty pipes, electrical cables, and darkness. It became their secret workshop. Every evening, they climbed into the hidden space and worked for hours while music from the prison band echoed through the building, masking the sounds of drilling. Then they faced another problem. Even if they escaped the cells, how could they fool the guards during the nightly bed checks? They needed someone to remain in bed, or at least something that looked human. For months, everything had gone perfectly. The guards still believed the prisoners were sleeping peacefully in their cells. The hidden workshop behind the prison walls continued to grow. The three men knew that escaping the cell was only the first challenge. The real problem was waiting outside. Even if they reached the shoreline, they would still face nearly 2 kilometers of freezing water, powerful tides, and one of the strongest currents in North America. Swimming wasn't an option. They needed a boat. But where could prisoners find one? The answer came from something every inmate received: raincoats. Each rubber raincoat looked useless on its own, but together, they could become something extraordinary. Over many months, the escape team secretly collected more than 50 prison-issued raincoats. Some were stolen. Others were traded with inmates who never realized why anyone wanted old waterproof clothing. Hidden inside the maintenance corridor, the men carefully cut the raincoats into large sheets. Using homemade tools, they stitched them together by hand. The seams had to be perfectly sealed. If even one opening leaked, the icy water would flood the raft within minutes. To seal every joint, they used heat from steam pipes running through the hidden utility corridor. The hot metal melted the rubber edges together, creating waterproof seams. Slowly, an inflatable raft began to take shape. Next came homemade life jackets. Every piece of equipment had one purpose: stay alive long enough to reach the mainland. But another problem remained. Once they escaped their cells, how would they reach the roof without being seen? Night after night, they explored the forgotten maintenance corridor. Eventually, they discovered an old ventilation shaft leading upward. One evening, Frank quietly climbed the ladder first. He pushed against a rusted metal grill. At first, Nothing happened. Then, with one final push, the grill shifted. Cool night air rushed inside. For the first time in months, they were looking at the sky instead of concrete. From the rooftop, they studied every guard tower, every spotlight, every patrol route. Every movement was memorized. There would only be one chance. One mistake would end everything. As the weeks passed, the fake heads became even more realistic. The men collected real hair from the prison barbershop floor. They carefully glued it onto the papier-mâché faces. They even painted eyebrows, wrinkles, and skin tones using stolen art supplies. Then Clarence, another inmate named Alan West, had planned to join them, but his ventilation hole wasn't large enough. He desperately chipped away at the concrete, but precious minutes slipped away. Finally, he admitted defeat. The other three couldn't wait any longer. Leaving him behind was the hardest decision they had made. Carrying their homemade raft, life jackets, and wooden paddles, the three men climbed the maintenance pipes toward the roof. Every movement had to be silent. One loose tool, one loud step, one flashlight pointed in the wrong direction, and everything would be over. After reaching the rooftop, they slowly crossed the dark prison building while powerful searchlights swept across the prison yard below. The guards never looked up. The men carefully climbed down the opposite side of the building using exposed pipes. Now, they were outside the main prison. But Alcatraz Island itself was still heavily guarded. Keeping close to the shadows, they quietly crossed service roads, slipped past storage buildings, and crawled over several security fences. The freezing night wind blew across the island. Finally, they reached the rocky shoreline. For months they had imagined this exact moment. Working quickly, they unfolded the raft. Using a homemade bellows built from parts of an old musical instrument, they inflated the rubber raft made from dozens of prison raincoats. The raft slowly took shape. There was no turning back. The icy waters of San Francisco Bay stretched into darkness. The current was incredibly strong. Even experienced swimmers had tried to cross it. Without speaking, the three men climbed aboard. Using homemade wooden paddles, they pushed away from the island. Within seconds, darkness swallowed them. The waves carried the raft farther and farther from Alcatraz. Back inside the prison, everything remained quiet until morning. At approximately 7 a.m., a correctional officer entered Frank Morris's cell for the daily wake-up call. Annoyed that the prisoner wasn't moving, the guard reached toward the sleeping figure. The head suddenly rolled off the pillow and shattered on the floor. The officer froze. Within minutes, the entire prison exploded into chaos. Sirens echoed across the island. Guards searched every hallway, every rooftop, every tunnel, and every shoreline. Boats filled the bay. Helicopters circled overhead. The FBI launched one of the largest manhunts in American history. Investigators eventually discovered the hidden workshop. They found homemade drills, pieces of concrete, the fake heads, the homemade life jackets, and proof that the escape had been planned for many months. But they never found the three men. Authorities officially concluded that Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers drowned in the freezing waters of San Francisco Bay. Yet, no bodies were ever recovered. Over the years, strange clues continued to appear. Family members claimed they received mysterious postcards. Photographs surfaced showing two elderly men who looked remarkably similar to the Anglin brothers. In 2013, the FBI revealed that they had received a handwritten letter from someone claiming to be John Anglin, saying that all three had survived the escape. The letter has never been fully verified. To this day, no one knows what really happened after that small homemade raft disappeared into the darkness. Did the three men drown in the freezing water? Or did they accomplish what millions believed was impossible, escaping the most secure prison in America? More than 60 years later, the mystery of Alcatraz remains unsolved, and it is still remembered as one of the greatest prison escapes in history.